to be here to speak to y'all. Now, this is a kind of very important and near and dear to me because my nursery, the plants we grow, we sell, we grow from seed, which is very unusual. But listen, here's the thing. Talking about collecting seeds, it really helps you to increase your diversity in your landscape and wherever you're, I mean, no matter what size it is, your yard or could be acreage, doesn't matter. But there's a huge need for diversity out there. So let's say you wanted to go put natives in your landscape, in your yard, and you go to your nursery. I mean, the best retail nursery out there, your typical one, is going to have 20, 30 species. You know, in my nursery, I have over 100. And I'm not bragging. It's just because I go out in the field and collect seed, my options are greatly increased. So, y'all, the picture on your screen right now is one that you will not find for sale. Prime example. This is a beautiful little wildflower right here, native, great foliage, and look at that flower, very unusual. But so you're not going to find this at a nursery. Just number one, it's hard to grow. Number two, there won't be enough demand for it for your wholesalers who supply your retail nurseries with the plants that they sell. There's not enough demand for this, but this is a very important plant. I mean, this serves our native pollinators, and it's just part of the diversity that's out there. And if it evolved, we need it, right? We may not know exactly why or what it serves, but if it's here, it's for a very good reason. So again, just another great example of one that you're not going to find for sale. If you want it, you'll have to go collect the seed. It's kind of what we're talking about tonight, which again is another reason to do this. I mean, that's really a beautiful flower. And when you see it growing, as you can see that the blurry pink behind, I mean, it's covered in flowers constantly all season. Who wouldn't want that? That's a characteristic we really want in our wildflowers. But again, so if you want this one, you'll have to go collect the seed. Now, this is a prairie that I collected from starting about 1980. And it's under warehouses now. And this is happening all over the place. This is another reason why we need to collect seed, because we need to save the diversity. If we're going to do restorations, we have to have these species, and we really need the genetics. And I'll talk about that a lot as we go through this presentation. So if you don't have diversity, you can grow it yourself. So y'all, why propagate? Here's just a few of the things for the really good reasons. To increase botanical diversities. Like I said, Cremeria, that's Cremeria lanceolata. That's a plant you're not going to find at a garden center. So if you want to increase botanical diversity on your property or anywhere, you won't be able to do it through garden centers. You can get a good foundation there, but not real diversity like we really want. To maintain biodiversity, y'all, you know, when houses get built, house developments get put in, they don't go back in with native plants. It's usually Bermuda or St. Augustine sod, and a couple of trees and a few crummy shrubs. No forbs, no flowers typically put there by the builder. So to maintain the biodiversity that was lost probably on the land that was scraped to build the house that you live in, put that diversity back that was lost when your house was built. Again, increase your options of the plants. If you're a gardener, I tell you what, most gardeners and plant people that I know, they like lots of different things, not just one species. They don't like monoculture. So again, go to garden centers and try to find native plants. Your options will be very limited, and you'll typically see the same ones over and over again. Autumn sage, Greg's mistflower, you know, lance leaf coreopsis, things like that. They're great plants, but we just need more diversity. And y'all listen, you'll hear that, as in the last presentation, you'll hear that word repeated over and over again, because it's fundamental for healthy ecosystems and a healthy world. And we need that as human beings as well. So now y'all look at this one, better quality plant material. You can grow better plants than the growers, because number one, they're doing a volume thing, business, and they're just pumping them out. So they don't take a lot of time with quality. Again, they'll grow 1,000 plants and cull 100 to get the quality that they need. So they're doing it fast. You'll be a lot slower, a lot more deliberate. Because most of those plants are not that you find from the garden center have not been grown from seed. They are clones. Most of them have been grown from cuttings, which is not good. Example, and y'all probably know this already, when COVID came through, sadly, it killed some people, but some people were resistant to that. And so it made the Homo sapien, our species line, stronger, because the ones that lived through that, their genetics have been refined. They might get COVID, but they might not die from it. So same thing with plants. I lose about 10% of all the plants I grow from seed every year in my greenhouses because they don't make it through the winter. They don't have the cold hardy gene to make it. So I'd rather that plant be culled out before you get it as a customer. And so again, from seed, you're probably going to get much stronger genetics and plant material. You can probably grow your plants organically if you want to. Most growers don't do that. They push their plants hard with high nitrogen fertilizers, water soluble fertilizers. Plant will grow and it will look okay, but it's weaker in a lot of different ways. So again, better quality plant material. If you grow, you propagate yourself. I just talked about you're better than the growers. You'll handle your plants better than big high production growers do. Genetic expression, seed propagation, every single seed that comes, say you find a single milkweed plant in the field, all the seeds that come off that plant will be genetically unique, every single one of them. So that's important as well. That genetic diversity is what refines evolution and what makes plants stronger. It strengthens species lines. So you can be a part of that too. Plants don't care where they're growing. In a wild field or in your front yard, as long as they can do their thing. And typically we're waiting for them to flower and serve pollinators and insects. That's done with leaf chemistry as well, not just pollen and nectar. Leaf chemistry is very important. That's another great reason for genetics. Hybridized plants lose things. You gain some characteristic for which they're managing, but you lose something too. And if you lose some of that leaf chemistry, then their value as host plants goes down. And insect reproduction associated with leaf chemistry of native plants is key. As we know, insects are the foundation for all ecosystems. And since we are a part of the ecosystems and we depend on them, we want insect reproduction. And y'all heard me talk in the last presentation about, I'm 64. I started driving at 15. Every time you stopped to get gas, you had to wash your windshield because you had bug splatters all over there. Most kids these days will never have to do that. And that's a problem for them, and they don't know it because our existence depends on the healthy existence of insects. So here's the thing too. If you buy seed, and there are a lot of good companies out there, one that I will endorse, Native American Seed. I love them. But commercially harvested seed, there's no way that you can actually select, if they're doing it with a machine, there's no way that they can select the quality of seed that you can as an individual hand collecting seed. On the same plant, there may be seed that are mature and others that are not. If you take the whole head, you're collecting immature seed. That's not good. So again, you can be assured that you have high quality seed because you're hand collecting it. So again, you harvest, you decide. Pick your preference when harvesting seed. Plus, pick your preference. I do this all the time. If I see two, let's say I'm out in the field and I see two echinacea growing side by side and they've got the seed already, and I look at the basal rosette of foliage, and one is extremely robust, like it's busting out of the ground, and one's normal, looks okay, but it's just regular normal. I like picking those ones that have those extra strong characteristics. So if I'm looking for some certain thing, I can make the decision myself. I don't know, when you buy seeds in a package, you don't know really their provenance, where they came from, when they were harvested. How many of y'all have bought seed and it's expensive and had either little or no germination? Well, probably weren't hand harvested. saving money and genetics. When you collect seed from the wild, you are saving genetics, and you're also saving money, because though it will cost you time and some gas if you're driving around, unless you live next to a prairie. Like I said, seed are expensive, and usually they're sold by the number, like 6 seed for $10 or something like that. And you can definitely collect a lot more seed from the wild, although don't over collect. We'll get into ethics in a minute. So again, cost nothing but your time and some gas money. Plus, you're out in the country. You're outside. It's nice to be out there. It's takes the stress away in a stressful world we live in. Again, genetic conservation, y'all. When I was starting this 40 years ago, there were a lot more places to go collect than there are now, and I have lost so many just little spots. And I'm starting to notice that grasses and forbs that used to be like really common, not that common anymore. I mean, this is not a challenge to people, but I used to see Monarda fistulosa quite regularly. Now it's one of the least common plants. And it's not a rare or endangered species, but it's becoming locally rare and endangered. And again, our genetics are unique. Little blue stem grows from Canada down to Mexico, but there are probably thousands of subspecies just because of where they grow locally, their ecotypes, their geographical location, that won't grow other places. So if we're going to do restoration, we've got to have genetics from the spot where you're going to go and do the restoration. It's extremely important. So seed collection and conservation it's the future. So, I mean, it's a big deal. Habitat conservation, y'all, collecting seed, people going and digging plants, y'all, the number, it's a crazy number. And this is not accurate, but it'll give you the idea. It's like 1/100th of 1% of all seeds cast by a plant make it to a reproducing adult. Now, a lot of seeds germinate, but they don't live long enough to make it to a reproducing adult, a flowering plant that produces seed. So if you're out looking at, when you see all these plants, a lot of people want to dig them. Don't, unless the dozer's coming, a mower. These plants are adapted to fire and grazing. They can handle being cut down at the ground level. But the bulldozer, they can't survive. So if that's coming, go dig them regardless of the time of year. But unless the site will be destroyed. It's very, very bad and unethical to dig plants. And again, do it because you're tired of paying $15 for plant material. And I cannot see the bottom thing because this line of stuff's here in my way, but it's something good. So read that last line and remember. So y'all collecting seed, a few considerations. Y'all best to collect from the wild in your area, but let me see if I can't move this thing here. There you go. But try to match soil type and pH. Listen, I tell you what, there's over here it's near Garland, near Spring Creek Forest. There's a site on the Spring Creek Forest Preserve where there is deep clay prairie, and then there's an area on the upland side that it's barrens. I mean, it's exposed limestone. It's really, like white. All you can see is white. And there's Echinacea angustifolia growing on both sides. So the genetics will be different. I'm not saying that if you germinated those seeds that the adults wouldn't live in both places, but one clearly adapted on a deeper soil with much more moisture, and one on a much thinner soil with much less moisture. So if your yard, try to collect from the same, if my yard was a barrens, I would probably collect seed from the barrens area because they would be more adapted to my site. Does that make sense? A lot of this is common sense. So soil type and pH, they will be different on those two sites that I just described. The pH will be slightly different. Same parent material, limestone. So that they'll be alkaline, but again, somewhat different. Ecotype, upland and lowland, same species. I just gave one good example. Another one I see a lot with grasses. I'll see lowland switchgrass up on top of the hill. Now it likes a lot of water. There must be a water table close to the surface there. But I don't know. I can't see that deep. So if you're collecting switchgrass for a riparian habitat, try to collect it from areas that stay wet longer. I mean, so the same species might have just slightly different genetics to be adapted to different sites. So pay attention to those things as well. And climate, Dallas and Houston, heavy, black, sticky clay in both areas, but different climates. Up here, we get a little bit hotter and drier. Houston's a lot more humid. Humidity affects plants. It really does. Affects their ability to respire and a number of other things too. So same species, collected off the same soil type, but different climates are going to have slightly different genetics. They evolved in different locations. So it's all about the evolution. Y'all collect ethically. I'm working with a young man right now. He's brilliant. Named Akash. He's met him at St. Mark's. He's fixing to go to Cornell. Taught him how to collect. And I mean, just normal stuff, the exuberance of youth. First time he collected echinacea, he brought me a brown paper sack with all echinacea heads, the full head. So I told him, look, there's, probably 200 seeds on that head. Remember the genetic uniqueness of every seed. So I showed him how to take 5 or 10 seeds off of each head. There were 50 heads in the bag. If you had taken 5 off of each one, what is that? 250 seeds. Now that's plenty for most people, right? So, and the other thing too, he took the whole head. That is a persistent seed head. And this varies by species. It doesn't shatter all the way once it starts casting seed. And then you will see that head all through the winter and even into next season. That is a larder, a pantry for a lot of species, especially our native birds. That is their pantry through the winter time. So take a few seeds, leave the heads. That's very important. And y'all be patient. Never collect your seeds early. One good way to tell is the head being fed? Usually, not always, but sometimes below the bud, what made the flower and is now what's made the seed pod, there will sometimes be a suture line that separates the stalk that connects that pod to the stalk. If anything above that suture line is brown, it means probably that head is now not being fed anymore by the plant, and now the seed is starting to mature. If it doesn't have a clear suture line, I like to wait till that stalk is completely dry, 4 to 5 inches down below the head, just to make sure that there's no possibility that's being serviced by the roots any longer. After that, you can collect the seed. I'll give you one example of one that won't release even when it's in the condition I just described. If you take your thumb and you try to thumb the head of this, here's your echinacea head, you come up there and you try to thumb that seed off, those heads are tough and they'll actually poke a hole in your finger. So if they're doing that and that seed's not really shattering, be patient, leave it there a little bit longer. Usually when those seed are really ready, when you start really giving a little bit of a crank on it, they'll just kind of start shattering and start releasing real easily. So again, be patient. And y'all, collecting is an all-season affair. It starts probably at the later part of April with some of your early annuals, and then just goes on through the season. I go about every 2 weeks. I always find something different. So really want to be serious and get a lot of diversity. Do this all season. Plus, you get to see a lot of different things. And y'all, what I like to do, I take a calendar and I like to mark on it like when I first see plants flowering, and then when I mark later when I see their seed ripe. A neat example is Penstemon cobea. Here in North Texas in Dallas County, it blooms sometimes early, mostly late March into April, and the seed doesn't mature till October. So, when I first saw that plant, it's so big and beautiful. I knew I wanted that seed. So after the blooms had faded, I was going like every 2 weeks. And I was like, man, this thing just ain't really going very fast. And, after 10 months later, 9 months later, it was getting ripe in October and November. So some of these things you got to be really patient. Some, it doesn't take, 2 weeks and they're already ready. And some, while the plant will be in flower and in seed at the same time. Cowpen daisy is an example of that. Plants that bloom from the start of spring through fall will typically have seed on them all season long as well. So, and you'll learn it as you start refining what you know about natives. You'll learn what's unique about each species and when to collect and how to care for those seeds. Now, here's what I carry when I collect: brown paper sacks. Never put fresh seed in plastic ever. If there's any green material left or any moisture left, you'll definitely get fungus and you'll lose your seed. It's not fun. So brown paper sacks, pruners and soil knife. Some things you want to cut the pods off if it's something that's, real pokey. I don't do a lot of that. Like I said, I usually collect the whole pod, but sometimes those can be helpful. Soil knife, y'all, this is important too. Take some baggies, some Ziploc baggies, and if you're collecting, let's say anything, whatever it is, Rattlesnake Master was the first one I did this with. I wanted the soil biology. So I went down, 4 to 5 inches, about 3 inches away from the crown of the plant, and got a nice little soil profile there, and then used that to inoculate my seed flat, because there's all kinds of biology in there that I wanted, that the plants actually evolve with that they need to. So soil knife is handy. Ziploc baggies, gallon baggies, again, to put soil in. And two, when you get these brown paper sacks, usually I fold them up, and I use the big Ziploc baggies to organize them, just to keep them from, because they want to open up in your bag that you're carrying, and it just helps you organize them. A camera, it helps a lot, y'all, to take pictures of plants that you're collecting from, especially if you don't know what they are. And I do that a lot. So take a camera with you to take pictures of things. A notebook, pen and pencil. Take notes. They'll be very valuable later. Note, locations like cup grass is one of my favorite native grasses. Started noticing that, I always see it usually next to the margin, around where you get some shade in the afternoon. A lot of times that grass, for example, it's pushed to the margins because it's what we call an ice cream plant. Things that eat it, it's one of their favorite things to eat, like ice cream. Cattle, especially if you turn cattle onto property that's got cut grass, it'll be the first thing they eat, the first thing to go. So it'll usually be like under a tree, somewhere where it's hard to get to. So make those kind of notes when you see things that are unique about a plant that are consistent. And it helps you learn the culture of the plant and helps you find the seed when you go looking in other areas that you're not familiar with. A 10 power loop, for a lot of different reasons. That thing will turn you on. It'll turn you on, man, many different kinds of ways. And I'll tell you something magical about it. When you show a child how to use that, it's a jeweler's loop. It's the only thing I've ever seen that will make them drop their phone, and they run all over the yard picking up stuff and looking at it, that's kind of curiosity I want to stimulate. Y'all, the 3 rules of seed foraging. If you're not a big landowner, you got to find them somewhere. Well, where do you go? I put this on here. These are kind of for fun. Some are valid, but the trespassing part, you want to really be careful, especially in Texas. Like, don't do it. Always ask first. The first one I think is the for sale sign. If there's a for sale sign, I usually just, fenced or not, I just get on it and walk around and make myself at home. If the landowner or anybody comes up and questions me, it's happened once. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about buying this property. I got to look it over, right? So I'm just looking it over. I got to get you off without getting shot. And then there's what's the next one, y'all? The for sale sign.
The shoulder rule.
The next one's the shoulder rule.
Yeah.
Well, the shoulder rule is when I come up to a fenced piece of property, it's like no trespassing. If you live, you'll be hung or whatever. Well, the shoulder rule is I can go through that fence up to my shoulder and reaching in there and grabbing stuff because I'm not technically on their property, and I'm not really touching it. So, and usually what I do now is I drop my phone over there and say, well, I was taking a picture of something, actually dropped my phone. I was just trying to retrieve it. And I don't see the last one. What's the last one say?
Play old if it's posted.
Oh, now y'all, I'm using, this is going to be valuable for me now since my hair is really starting to turn gray. I'm going anywhere I want to. And if I'm challenged, the first thing I'm going to do is say that the other person is trespassing. Oh, no, you're on my property. And then when they say, well, you idiot, I've lived here for 100 years, I'm going to go, well, I think I'm getting dementia. I think I may be in the wrong place after all. So, just kind of feign being messed up and, and then try to get off the property. But anyway, just play old. But listen, when I say ethical, I'm ethical when I'm like taking the seed from the plant, but because so many people don't care about, what they have on their property and they're going to do, sell it to be scraped or whatever. I will do a lot of things that I tell other people just don't do. I don't encourage it ever, but I will do a lot of things for genetics. It's really important. It's not a game. You lose a plant, you lose it forever. And we're actually losing some pretty serious stuff. Like, I'll give you one example. This young student I was talking about, where he's finding some areas that have Liatris glandulosa on them. Now, somebody tried to find Liatris glandulosa in any books. I mean, this is a rare species. It's never been common. It's only known from 5 sites. So, and one of the sites we were looking on last week is we were right next to the bulldozers. I mean, it's coming. We're going to have to try to find some way to rescue these off a limestone hardpan. And I've dug plants out of clay, but I've never dug them out of straight limestone. But I'm going to try it for the first time because the plant is so rare. I mean, it's a rare son of a gun, and it's behind the no trespassing sign. But I'm going in. I'm going to get it. So. Somebody come bail me out. Y'all, here's the be patient part. This is a good example of that. This is milkweed. Y'all, the little hairs, the little white things you see right there that carry in the next slide is better. This is what carries the milkweed away, what disperses the seed. Well, before it serves that purpose, think of those like blood vessels. That's what connects the seed to the plant and how it gives it its nourishment that makes it develop. So if you collect these pods before this suture line splits like this, those seed will be immature. And a lot of people do that with milkweed because they want that seed so badly. Well, this one's ready to go, okay? Without question. And here's what it looks like about 5 minutes later. The air comes in there, it dries out these little, I call them pilosa. This is actually off that same pod about 10 minutes later. And here they are. The wind started carrying these and just pulling them away. At this stage, they are ready to go. Go, go, go. Get them. And that's about as many as I'd collect off that one plant. What are you looking at? Less than 10 seed or so. That one pod will have 200 to 300 seeds in it. So hundreds of plants in a field, go collect 5 from each one. Again, you've got a lot of seed. Y'all, this is a bag I carry my brown paper sacks in, and look at the color of it. Sometimes I'll put this down and start wandering around looking at stuff. I turn on, where's my bag at? Well, I want to be able to see it. Have something that's got some bright colors so you can pick this up. Do not have a camouflaged bag. You'll never find it. You'll forget it. Blaze orange would be good. Where to collect, y'all? Any wild place you can find. What that means to you, I don't know, but just any wild place. A lot of times you'll see undeveloped intersections. Sometimes they'll be signed. A lot of times those corners are for sale, and those are out of state landowners. Most of them are like not even from here. Get on there, get that stuff. It's there. Land for sale, unfenced land, private land with permission. Cemeteries, y'all. Old cemeteries are great places to find, especially native grasses, but you'll find a lot of good stuff at old cemeteries. Y'all, where not to collect? Private land without permission. You want to get shot, you just go crawling around on somebody's land and just start doing anything. Local, state, and national parks, y'all, another big no-no. I was at Sequoia National Park one year in California. We saw this cop had pulled this car over, and we were like, cops in national parks? And the back we got up there, and it was one of them gremlins, I think, and one of them big old hatchbacks. that thing was busting out with ferns, these big giant 3-foot tall ferns. Somebody just walked out into Sequoia National Park and just started pulling up all these big native ferns and thought they were at the nursery. And I mean, so I don't know, man. I mean, there's a lot of folks that really, so botanical gardens or special reserves. When I was director of horticulture at Texas Discovery Gardens, I cannot tell you how many times I had to stop people from pulling up my plants or taking the seeds off my plants. And, I just don't get it. Wilderness areas or study areas. Y'all, you might be pulling the host plant for one of the rarest insects in North America or the last of its kind. I mean, so just, I promise you, wherever y'all live out, well, it's not much country anymore down there. Turn it up as fast as they can, but just get out of town a little bit on some farm to market road, and usually you'll find some stuff. Y'all, here I am on the side of I-45 coming back from Hempstead, and this is between, well, I used to know what this was between. Oh, Madisonville and somewhere just up north of there. And this is on the north side of the highway. This runs for about 300 yards, this Rudbeckia maxima. I mean, look at that. And it's right there by the highway. And I got my seed. This is one place I got my Rudbeckia maxima seed. This is heavy black clay. Same thing I got up here in Dallas County. And they're just adapted just wonderfully. This is my greenhouses. So y'all, techniques, how to do this. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So you got your seeds. So this was about collecting. Well, you've heard that. Well, let's get on to what to do with them. A few direct seed growing options. Y'all, what I'm talking about here is when you can take the seed and just don't do anything to it. You collected it, and now you're going to sow it directly. That means you're not putting it in a seed flat or a cell flat to transfer to do something with it later. You're going to grow it for it to grow in that place, in the ground. Y'all, the reasons for directly sowing seeds in the ground, look at the very last thing in that little part. Everything, y'all, with only a very few exceptions, a seed directly sown in your landscape will always make the best plant, because that root gets to grow in native plant from the very beginning. Well, let's back up. Mountain pink and bluebells both have extremely small seeds, and to grow them, to germinate them and like put them in a different container or do something with them it can be done. It's been done. I've done it, but it's not easy and it's not that effective. So wherever you want these on your landscape, you should just get the seed and just directly sow them. Just throw them right out there. Now in containers, y'all, when I grow for my nursery, what I used to do is start the seeds in seed flats, no matter what they were, and dibble out the individual plants, put them in containers. And I started learning that, there's some things like if I'm selling gallon grasses, just sow the seed right directly into the gallon container and they'll grow fine like that. You never have to worry about dibbling them out or the transplant shock. So some reason to do that, fast growers, like Salvia azurea is one I grow at my nursery. There's no reason to sow it in a flat and dibble it out. The thing grows 100 miles an hour. I mean, it'll be a mature plant in 2 weeks after you plant the seed practically. That's an exaggeration, but really fast. So anything that grows fast, it's just a few less techniques you got to do to mess with the plant. Hard to grow, just go back up to mountain pink and bluebells. Those seed are extremely small. It's just a hard technique to grow that plant. Native grasses, they respond well, directly sown into containers. And again, little things, eustoma, lobelia. Y'all, another reason I directly sow seeds is if I'm growing a lot of plants, like when people use sedges in their landscape, they don't use one, they'll use 15 to 20. I'm not going to grow individual single plants and wait for those to mature. So I take a lot of seed and I'll directly sow them into a cell flat and grow them out and sell. I'll never have to touch them after that. They get grown from that cell that I directly sowed them into. So directly sowing seeds there's a lot of good options and a lot of good reasons for doing it. Now, individual plants have evolved to grow in a lot of different kinds of ways. I mean, a lot of different kinds. There's plants I've been trying to grow for 20 years and still had no success. Rusty black haw viburnum is one that I just cannot figure out how to grow that thing from seed. It can be done, but I cannot do it yet. So do your seeds need light or dark? Y'all, for example, Solidago, that genus, goldenrods, those seeds need light to germinate. If you cover them up like we normally do seeds, you put them, cast them, and you cover them up with dirt, thin layer of dirt, they won't germinate because they need light to germinate. So you have to know specific requirements. Do the seeds have a thick seed coat like most legumes, like bluebonnets? They have a thick seed coat. They need scarification. You've got to wear that seed coat down just a little bit before they're thin enough, before water can penetrate the seed coat to be the catalyst for germination, to start the germination process. So do they need scarification? Do they need cold stratification? Do they need cold moist stratification? Cold stratification with moisture. Do they need warm moist stratification? Some seeds have double dormancy on their embryos. They need a warm moist stratification period followed by a cold moist stratification period. Then they'll germinate after another warm period. I mean, I think that's what the rusty black haw needs, something it's a multiple thing for the immature embryo, but I don't know. I'm figuring it out. So you get it. It can be simple or it can be complicated, but when in doubt, this is my rule on this. If I've got a new species, and listen, Jill Noakes, there's a book, How to Propagate Native Texas Plants. I found it to be okay, but it didn't give me the specific information I needed to germinate seeds for most of the species. I learned a lot of this when I was director of horticulture at Texas Discovery Gardens, and we grew for those plant sales. A lot of it was trial and error, but I learned over 5 years how to do this. So here's what I'm taking you back to. When in doubt, if you don't know, cold, and in Texas, cold moist stratify the seed for 30 days. Usually, if a seed needs it, it's got to have that treatment. If it doesn't, it will not hurt it. So most of our grasses do not need any treatment. Eastern gamma grass does. That's one that needs cold moist stratification. All the other ones, just throw them when it's warm enough, the soil's warm enough, they'll germinate in 7 to 10 days, no problem. But when in doubt, cold, moist, stratify for 30 days. Trees, 60 to 90 days. Go 90 when in doubt. Y'all, here's a few plants I wanted to show you that, well, no, let me get away from that. Here's that bluebells. Very tiny seed. Best to direct sow this. There's an example. Big O, that's almost as big as the flower is. It's a big, huge flower and stays in bloom a long time. So people want this one. They do not transplant well, and the seed is extremely tiny. So again, this one's, and y'all, this species, it lacks an ephemeral wetland, a bar ditch, an area that after a rain holds water for a couple of days and then dries up. That's where you'll throw this seed. So again, if you're out in nature collecting seed, make a note of where you see the mature plants. Will they grow in my yard? Well, if you don't have a bar ditch or a place that holds water for 2 or 3 days, you probably won't be successful with this plant. Doesn't mean you won't be, but the further you go out of the way you see it in its natural habitat, the further away from its environment and conditions that it lacks. So again, common sense. But y'all are looking at me, right? Listening to me. This can't be that hard. Right. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy on earth, but I do have a tiny bit of common sense and I use my powers of observation. That's what this is really important in this. So here's a seed flat. It's about a 12 or no, it's about a, 10 by 18 inches, 2 or 3 inches deep, filled with soil. After your seed come out of stratification if they don't need it, salvias usually don't need nothing. Direct sow, fresh seed, they don't need stratification. If you're doing big productions, like for plant sales, y'all want to do a plant sale and grow a bunch of plants and then have plants in containers, seed flat's a good way to do it. A lot of plants coming up. Look at this one. Here's a low cost alternative. This one right here, if you buy these from the greenhouse mega store there, well, I don't know, these aren't too expensive, but $1.50 a piece. These at the dollar store, you can get these aluminum things, poke holes in the bottom, same exact thing. That seeds don't know what kind of container they're in. So look at those seedlings coming up, easy to dibble out. Here's some, look, when you see, this is what I call even germination across the flat. All the seeds coming up at about the same time. These are milkweed seeds. You whatever they needed to germinate, you found it, because look, they all came up pretty much the same time. No staggered germination. Sometimes that's normal, but most of the time not. When you see this, you can go, hey, whatever I did the right thing. These milkweed seeds, like y'all did last month, were cold and moist stratified for 30 days. They were sown in the seed flat, covered with about 1/4 inch of soil. 5 to 7 days later, here's what you get. Now, y'all, when you're sowing your seed flat, you want to sow them lightly. Don't be heavy, because when you start digging them out, if they're too tight, you'll be digging out 3 or 4 at a time and busting them up. You want to try to be able to dig out of individual flat. My sister actually sowed this flat, and it's gorgeous. That's perfect. Look at the space between the individual plants. I can get to all of them. They're easy to access. I won't disturb the roots of the adjacent plant. So beautiful job right there by my sister, who is the propagator for our nursery, and she's really, really good. Y'all, here is flats. I think this is, y'all, this is a long time ago. This is an old PowerPoint presentation. I think this is tropical milkweed when I was growing that. I don't grow that anymore. But you can see I've been working on the flat to the left, finding an individual plant, using this chopstick as a dibble, and then just teasing that plant out of that flat and then transferring it to those quart pots you see in the back, those orange ones. So again, a small amount of space to germinate a lot of seeds. Look at the one on the right, hasn't been touched yet. There's probably 100 plants in there, and that's a very small area to hold 100 seedlings. Individually dibbled out, you got 100 plants, really good survival rate on that after that technique. So if you're, again, propagating for plant sales or just distribution, a good way to grow a lot of plants in a small space and then efficiently dibble them out and do that. So good technique. When do you do the transfer? Look at those. Those are well along the way. Look how many sets of true leaves they have. You can see at the bottom, like look where the chopstick's stuck into the flat on the one on the right. Look at that plant at about the 2 o'clock position. You can still see the cotyledons down there. This one that particular plant has 3 sets of true leaves. These are well on their way. They will handle transferring real nicely. But here's your general set of rules. When you see the first true set of leaves, this one actually, you can see you've got cotyledons. Those are the big round ones with the entire leaf margin. Entire means smooth. Look at the difference between the cotyledons and the first set of true leaves. Those leaf margins aren't smooth. That's a rough leaf margin. So this plant, I think this is basket flower. This one, it's actually, you can start seeing the emergence of the second set of true leaves. This one's ready to transfer. At the cotyledon stage, they're not ready. Now, the one exception, look at that, Asclepias. You can transfer those pretty easily at the cotyledon stage. Now, the root has the final say. Eustoma, that's the bluebells. If you try to dibble that plant out, no matter how big it is, if the roots are just not developed, it will not survive that transfer. So eustoma, when I used to dibble those out, I don't anymore. I direct, if they're being grown in it, if I'm going to grow eustoma in a quart to sell it, I direct sow into the quart and let the seed germinate right there, so I don't have to touch it. But that right there, that plant will be ready to dibble out of the seed flat about 6 to 8 months after that seed has germinated. It takes that long. The plant's pretty big, but it takes that long to get those roots able to survive that. So in general, you can start transferring when you see the first true set of leaves. exception, you can do it earlier if it's Asclepias. Later, use stoma. So see, when you start talking about individual species, the propagation of, they will have specific things associated with them. So it starts getting more complicated. Now, I'm running up on my time. I'm aware of that. I'm going to try to get going here. Y'all, this is just a code frame. You know, usually when I'm stratifying seed, I put them in March 1st, take them out 30 days later. That's April 1st. Our freezes are gone, and that's about the time they'd be doing it in the wild anyway. So, but if there's some reason you needed, these are veggies. This just looks like, I remember this is that's some cabbage and might be some lettuce in there too. This was at Texas Discovery Garden. Excuse me. But if you need to start something early, a cold frame is a good way to do it. That's got a lid on it. The lid is open. See that thermometer in there? These cold frames on extremely cold days, if you've got that, if it's sunny and you've got that that lid shut and it's sealed like it should be, it can get extremely hot in there. You can cook your seedlings, but it'll get warm in there, and you can start things in January. I mean, you can create an environment in a cold frame like that that is like spring. So if you need to start early, a cold frame is a good way to do it. And for veggies especially, if you're a veggie grower, that's a really good thing. Get into cold frames. Now keep records. This is a plant label. Verbicina and cloides. This is cowpen daisy. So this was it. I can tell this is Texas Discovery Gardens. I didn't know anything about this plant. So on February 28th, I sowed these seeds in a seed flat after they had a 25-day stratification. So that's just notes about how I treated that seed. So when you're doing this, you're going to you can't have too much information about what you did to propagate these seeds. So y'all, this is my information. There's more slides after this. I want to show you some examples of species that if you want them, you're practically going to have to go collect the seed and grow them, because you will not find them at a garden center unless you come to one like mine that grows from seed. So there's my email address. There's my phone number. Y'all got this last time. If y'all got any questions, you can email me, text me. Some of the things I do. Y'all, let's look at some of the species that you will most likely not find at your garden center. This is our 4 o'clock. This is Mirabilis. This doesn't look like anything like your grandma's 4 o'clock, but this is our 4 o'clock. So, and look, that is not a showy. There's a seed right there in the center. That's not a real showy flower. That thing is little. It's littler than a diameter of a dime. But here's the thing. I was talking about that diversity. Some insect co-evolve with this, not only to pollinate it, but to use it. I would say almost every host plant out there is a host plant. It's got some leaf chemistry with which some insect is required for its development, like monarchs and milkweed. They need the cardiac glycosides found in Asclepias for their development. They don't eat it. They don't live. They die without it. So here's a great example. Most people would not just, drive 100 miles to go buy that plant, but it's things like this that I love to collect more than the big showy stuff, because this is the stuff that's going to go away. We'll never know it was here, but it's got some link to the ecosystem that we need. And every time you destroy and lose one of those, it's like taking parts off a car randomly. Eventually, you're going to get to something that shuts it down or stops it from functioning correctly or well enough to do what it's supposed to do. And again, because we as human beings depend on nature and the ecosystem for our survival, it's important. It behooves us to save these kinds of things. So again, if you want this 4 o'clock, you're going to have to go collect this seed. And mister, if you want this one, you better hurry, because the places where this is found are going fast. And that's all these prairie remnants. This is a little Agalenus. Big. It's a little autumn bloomer. It's a little annual, which most people won't mess with. But again, take the time, get out there and collect this stuff. These will become less and less common over time. Y'all, we have plenty of lawn. None of these 3 species in this picture are rare, but again, because a lot of these have adapted to urban environment. This is buffalo grass, frog fruit, and horse herb. But get rid of your grass and start putting these in. Transfer your what we know as normal turf grasses, Bermuda and buffalo, zoysia, whatever it is, and start putting in these kind of things. Dahlia purpurea. Dahlias are fickle. They're kind of hard to grow. They don't look great most of the year. So they're not a good commercial species, right? So, but this is one you won't find most of the time for sale. A lot of seed, collect it. Dahlia multiflora, another dahlia. These are legumes, soil builders, very important for ecosystems, but not for sale. Typically, I have both of those species at my nursery. Eustoma, another one, just great. Look at that housing development. That is now where I took that picture. That is now houses. But that was switchgrass. You see Polytania, prairie parsley, all the bluebells. There was a lot of other stuff there too, but it's gone now. This one I found in Spring Creek Forest in Garland. Silene stellata, shade plant, shade native. What a beauty. Get in the woods, man. Get those shade natives too. Very important. I have a bunch. Silene regula. This picture was taken on the Navasota River. Hardly see this one very often. In fact, not sure that shouldn't be there. I'm not sure what that escaped from somewhere. That is not really normal around here, but it was growing down there. I don't know where it came from, but I had to take the picture. That's just so sweet. This one, Lindheimeri texana, little annual, just got through blooming around here. But again, you'll never see it for sale because it's an annual, gets discriminated against. But it's tall and showy and stays in bloom a long time. Easy to grow. This one, fringed puccoon. What a name. What a pretty flower. You know what? That flower right there is sterile. That doesn't even, that's weird about this plant. The flower that makes the seed is sessile. It's right up against the stalk and very not showy. Again, try to figure out why would this plant evolve this kind of thing when it's not even part of the reproduction, and it certainly looks like it. But look at that syrphid fly. It's doing something on it. I don't know. But you won't see this one for sale, and I think that's beautiful. Mimosa nutalii are little legume ground covers. This would be a great replacement for a lawn. It only gets about 2 inches tall. That little flower stays in bloom from spring till frost. And the whole plant never gets more than 4 or 5 inches tall. So it beats all the code requirements. Never have to mow it. There's one. Look at these two together. What if these two are planted right in the same, mixed in your lawn together? Look at that yellow pink together mixed. That'd be awesome. Neptunia lutea. There's another one, Mimosa strigolosa, a little lighter pink, but a little mixture of all three of those, and some horse herb and some frog fruit and buffalo grass for your lawn. Never mow, never water, never fertilizer. You got pollinators out there all the time. The seeds feed quail, dove, all kinds of birds. Getting better than that. Beautiful. The Eryngium leaving worthy eye. Here's a nice annual. Look at those blue stamens. I never seen blue pollen before, but there it is. And this one, if you like cut flowers, keeps that color as a cut flower. I mean, stays purple like that. So that's really cool. I see a lot of diversity coming to this flower. A lot of different insects use it. Its cousin, rattlesnake master. This one, I see this now in the nurseries a little bit. This is a great plant, indicator species on the prairie. If you see this, probably looking at an unplowed area. Liatris. You might see Liatris in your nursery center sometime, but it won't be yours. It won't be the one. It's like spicata, Liatris spicata or something like that. I've never seen one of our native ones in a nursery center unless it was mine. I grow about 5 different species of Liatris. Aronia are ironweeds. I don't know why, man. They stay in bloom a long time, and that's a big old flower head and an intense purple. And there's a bunch of down there where y'all my favorite ironweed, Veronia Lindheimer's ironweed. It's just out. It's blooming right now. It's outstanding. You see anything purple in the field right now, about 2 feet tall, that's what it is. But again, you ain't going to find it at the garden center. Solidago rigida, hardly find any goldenrods. People think they produce all the pollen for allergies, and that's ragweed, not goldenrod. Here's an annual I would recommend. This is basket flower. This thing's great. Seed, big old giant seed, persists in this head all through the winter. It's very important for birds. And the leavings is kind of like a thistle, the little fuzz. A lot of birds use that for bird nest. Asters, high diversity, but low species available. A lot of species out there, but in the nursery centers, you'll see a couple of species, fall aster, and maybe one other one. We got 20 or 30 species in native just here in Texas, and they're great. All of them. Go to the field and collect the seed for those. A side note, grow some food too. I mean, these right here, I think these are radishes. You don't have to wait till you go buy the radish. But when you buy the radish that you buy at the store, that thing's about to flower and about to be dead. That's an old plant. Yeah, it's good for you still, but not as nutritious as this. You can grow any food and have a sprout in about 3 to 5 days, and you don't have to wait on them grocery trucks from California. Penstemon cobea, here's another one. I think you can see this sometimes for sale, but not too often. This one's not easy to grow. It goes through it's kind of like a petulant teenager. It goes through about 15 different stages where you're trying to figure out what in the hell it's doing. And look at the different colors. Everybody wants the purples and the darker, and I like them too, but boy, I think that white's pretty. I like that one. Eric, get your sedges out there. Evergreen component in the environment. Looks like grass. Beautiful texture. The seeds are good for wildlife. Just a great one. Takes sun and shade. I mean, very versatile. Most of your native Asclepias, y'all excuse me, most of your native Asclepias, you're not going to find in a garden center. And if you find them, they've been treated probably with a systemic pesticide, because Asclepias milkweed likes to get aphids, and they can't sell it at their garden center by law if it's got an aphid on it. So they use a pesticide, which is no good, because as a host plant, you can't have a poison running through it. It'll kill what you're trying to feed. Here's one around y'all. This is side cluster. Y'all are actually propagating this one. I don't think y'all are propagating this one, although I love it. That one y'all are. That's antelope horns. Viridis, that one. But all the milkweeds are important. There's a shade one, white avens. That's a great one for the shade. Well, again, all these won't find them at garden centers typically. These, you want them, you got to grow them. But look at all the stuff that's so good and pretty that just go get the seed. You can have it. Zezia Ari, I found this one in Spring Creek Forest. This one right here is a host plant for the eastern black swallowtail butterfly. And the umbels, this flower form, magical. They attract beneficial insects like crazy. So you'll get the good guys that feed on the bad guys coming to your yard if you put umbelliform flowers in your landscape. And here's a good native that has that. Euphorbia bicolor. Snow on the prairie. This is a great one. This little annual, another annual. In the late summer, you see this all over the place. Really nice. Won't find it for sale. Linum, this little flax. Look at all the little brown seed heads around there, y'all. And look at the little legume ground cover. So look at this little mix. Wouldn't this be beautiful in a lawn? Look at all those seed ready to collect. And you can tell, look at right down there at the bottom of the picture. See how the suture lines are starting to open? Those seed are ready. They're starting to dehisce along that suture line. They're ready to go. Stragulus, our ground plums. Again, you'll never see these for sale. You have to collect that seed. What a beautiful flower. Look at that. Gorgeous. Euonymus atropurpureus, y'all, the wahoo understory tree. Not down there where y'all are. This is up here where we are, but that little thing is persisting all winter long on the tree like a little ornament. Beautiful. The seal films, your rosin weeds, don't see those much. There's a little native bee collecting pollen in there, probably nectarin. Polytania nutalii or prairie parsley. Here, you know, dill and fennel and parsley, they'll host for this. That's a host plant. They do this. This butterfly does well on those plants. But here's our native. Why not have our native host plant for our native insects? And there it is. You're not going to find prairie parsley for sale at a nursery center. Seed are ready right now. These things are about 3 feet tall. They're easy to see, completely brown, big seeds. They're biannuals. So when you sow them now, and y'all, when do I sow these seeds if I'm sowing them? Sow them when the plant sows them or in the fall. Let them go through that winter, and usually you'll see something next spring. This is a fall. This is right here is going to germinate this fall, though. It'll be a rosette of foliage till next spring. And then it'll go 1 year like that, and then the next year it'll spike and bloom. Now this is the last slide, but just kind of talk this. So y'all, here's what we're losing. This is a 100-acre field in Hunt County that's now under houses, but there was a lot of stuff out there. I was collecting milkweed seed that day, so we're losing that. So you can take those genetics by going and collecting seed from the wild and growing these plants and putting them in your home landscape. Like I said, the plant doesn't really know where it is. If it's in your front yard or in a big old field, it can serve the same purpose. And the purpose it needs to serve is to serve as a reproductive platform for our insects because of the leaf chemistry, and then the pollen and nectar that serves them. And then, of course, those guys serve everything else. You like birds? Well, most of them feed their babies caterpillars. So just that cycle rolling on and on. So the ability and the knowledge to go and collect seed from the wild, you can see all the different important aspects that it touches on, the genetic diversity, the saving of the genetics, and then just the economy of it, the fun of it. And teach your kids and grandkids how to do this, because it's going to be something that, you know, we all need to do for the preservation of these species. And again, the genetics. So y'all, that's it for this one. If y'all, again, I allow for a little bit of Q&A. I'm sorry I went over my time a little bit. I apologize, but I tend to think this is pretty important, so I get a little long-winded, so I apologize.